Hi everyone, in this video we're going to talk about the 10 steps of GTO in a pretty big picture way. The purpose of this video is to show the logical progression of GTO, and in the next series of videos we'll dive deep into each step. So these are the 10 steps of GTO, and we organize them as a circle surrounding outcomes because, again, these are all of the core ingredients, the core components that when you mix them all together, outcomes falls out. So right now I'm going to go through the 10 steps of GTO in a pretty big picture way. And again, in the next set of videos, we'll dive deeper. So don't feel overwhelmed by the speed through which we go through these questions. My goal is to show you the logical progression of how they fit together. So when we start a project, we're first focused on a problem. And we want to know our problem real deep. We want to really understand what the problem means. So this is where a needs assessment comes in. It's typically our first step in a GTO process where we go out and really try to understand the need. What is the chronic problem in the community that you're trying to fix? Once you really understand the problem, you set goals and desired outcomes. Step 2 of GTO is about a commitment. What are you committing to change? We now know from GTO step 1 what are the major problems out there. But what is it that we're really committing to change? And this is step 2. Once we know what we're going to change, we want to know how to change it. So we select a program. And there's huge fields out there on evidence-based practices. Evidence-based practices is one of the largest areas of funding. We keep, right, in the research to practice model, we keep funding and funding new evidence-based programs. And so all of that funding and all of that work falls into just step 3 of GTO, best practices. But as implementation scientists and evaluators, we know that having an evidence-based program is not enough. It's a necessary but insufficient condition because sometimes you have an evidence-based program that simply can't translate to another cultural context. So just because an evidence-based program was shown to be effective in, say, urban, white, American cities or neighborhoods, it doesn't mean it's going to translate to the Thai culture. It's not going to translate to maybe a Thai rural context. And so step 4 of GTO is all about fit. So when you're selecting a program, you want to choose one that has evidence behind it to show that it's effective, but also one that could be adapted and fit to the cultural context that aligns with you. But that's, again, not enough. We also have to know that we're ready to do it or that we can get ready to do it. So step 5 of GTO is all about saying, well, if this is the program I want to implement or the policy or procedure, but if this is the new thing I want to implement, do I have enough capacity to do it? Can I build the capacities I don't have? Do I have the motivation to do it? And could I build motivation? That's all the essence of step 5. And in the next module, module 2 of this TA Training Academy, we're going to go real deep into readiness. Step 6 is about putting a systematic plan together. So once you know what you're doing, how you're going to adapt it, and how you're going to be ready for it, we put a plan together. Then step 7 is taking that plan and implementing it. However, we know that good ideas and good plans could often fail to get results because they're just not implemented well. And so in step 7, we monitor how we're implementing it and we improve implementation as the time goes along. Then we move to step 8, which is outcome evaluation. And this is largely the land of the RCTs and the traditional evaluator. This is where you say, we knew what we wanted to do, did we get to our outcomes? This is the traditional evaluation. But we don't stop there. Even if we get to the outcomes, we believe that things could always be improved. And as time goes on, things typically do need to be improved. So step 9, CQI, stands for continuous quality improvement. It is taking a systematic approach to improving the program as time goes on to adjust to new needs or new challenges that may have arisen. And then step 10 is about sustainability. It's not enough to get to outcomes when funding sources and support systems are in place. You have to be able to sustain it in a routinized and habitual way in the long term. So these are the 10 steps, got tongue-tied there, 10 steps of GTO. Oftentimes when we present on GTO, we liken the 10 steps to a painter's palette. As I just explained the 10 steps in the previous slide, it communicates somewhat of a linear relationship between the steps. I start at step 1 and I end at step 10, right? First I do step 1, then I do step 2, and when I'm done with that, I move to step 3 and 4, 5, and so on and so forth. The problem with that, sure, in a perfect world, that would be wonderful. The problem, however, is that we don't live in a perfect world, and implementation is never linear. It's never that straightforward. And so the beautiful part of GTO, the user friendliness of it, is that it doesn't need to be done that way. It doesn't need to be done linearly. If you recall from the last video, I talked about GTO as being a system of accountability, because the essence and the value of GTO is making sure you're doing all of these steps. I did not say you have to do all these steps in this order, in this time progressive way. You just have to do all the steps. You have to ask and answer the accountability questions. You have to ask and answer, did I do these and did I do them well? And if so, you move on. You work with what is needed at the time, not against it. So we liken it to a painter's palette. So when a painter goes out and paints, he may take his paintbrush and dabble in black and paint it, and dabble in yellow and paint it, and dabble in red and paint it. However, when you're painting like that, you don't necessarily get to the art that you see on the screen now. Because what a real artist does is they might dabble in black and paint it, then dabble in yellow and paint it, then go back to black and paint, and then maybe they need to go with red and orange at the same exact time to get the vibrancy of a color. And true art is created when you are using all of the colors on your palette, and you're using them in the ways that you need at a particular time. You're using them to create something bigger. There's a synergism amongst all of the colors. You cannot create a beautiful bird on a screen, on a canvas, if you're only using 1 or 2 colors. You can't create art by keeping everything separated from each other. Art comes from the mixing together of all of the colors, the synergism between all of the colors. And so this is just like GTO. GTO, you can't get to outcomes by doing a needs assessment and forgetting about it and leaving it in the background, but just saying you did it, and then going on to goals and putting them out there, but choosing a program that doesn't match goals. The synergism of all of the steps, of doing it all in a way that is meaningful and authentic to you, going back to a step when you feel like maybe we skipped something there. In the last video, I talked about how the introductory videos here will be at a more superficial level, and then you're welcome to dive as deep as you want to go, because you may start with these introductory videos and you might dabble in a step, and then you might realize, you know what, Andrea, we need to go deeper. And that's going back to a step and going deeper. So this is how it's designed. This GTO is a science. It has been studied for decades, but it's also an art, and it's an art that you could keep practicing and doing and diving deeper in, and we are here to support you throughout the journey. GTO, and this is jumping a little bit here, GTO is also very flexible. So this is just something I want to surface at this point in time, and then we'll revisit it in our third module on TA. So on each row represents a different step of GTO on the screen. So you could see them listed in the first column: needs, goals, desired outcomes, best practices. And each of these steps can be done at different levels. So you could think about what the needs are for a district. You could think what the needs are for a sub-district. And those two needs may be different. The needs of policymakers at a district level may be different from, TA providers at a sub-district level. You could then think about the individual elder and what are their needs. They're likely their needs are different than the policymakers at the district level. You could also think about research needs. What are the needs? If we're doing this research project, we could ask, what are our needs for research? Then the whole thing follows out of this, right? Goals and desired outcomes. You could think about them at these different levels. The best practice for policymakers at a district level might be different from what an individual is doing. So each of these questions, GTO is very flexible, and you could ask all 10 accountability questions for each one of these domains. And the reason I'm foreshadowing this here is because you could also ask these questions for TA. And so these questions that we're asking at the sub-district and district level, the questions that are laying the foundation for our PRISM project, will also be the questions that we'll be using to lie at the foundation of getting to outcomes TA, GTO TA. We will talk about that in a later module. I just wanted to surface it for now to introduce you to the idea. So up next, we're going to take a detailed look at each step of the GTO process and dive deep. We will see you there.